portion of the event this evening, and I am very excited to be able to tell our story for the other side of the family. But first, I want to be able to recognize the partners that made this happen this evening. First, Chef Gillum, Smokey J's, that executed my menu tonight. And his team, he has a fantastic team, and I'm very grateful for everything that they've done to make this vision happen tonight. So thank you, everybody. So I spent a lot of time actually writing this story, and I'm going to read it, which is not something that I normally do. If you guys know that I do a lot of TV, and I do a lot of live TV, and really off the cuff. But this story is very important to my mom, who's here this evening, my mom, Tina. And to my family. So, with that in mind, let's see if I can actually take this off here. Okay, can you guys still hear okay?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so our theme tonight is the other side of the family. And I chose the Mob Museum as our venue because in this very building, several years ago, my mother had an epiphany, a realization that there was more to her father, Frank Camagna, than she had previously known. It's no longer on display, but a few years back, there was a series of white dinner plates on the wall here at the Mob Museum, each with the name of a different American city. San Jose on the far left, and New York City on the far right. There were also plates for Pittsburgh and Detroit, and she realized that our Italian family had coincidentally lived in each of these areas. As with most Italian families, there are stories that you are told, and there are the details that you piece together on your own. When my mom first told me about the plates, I was minorly amused. A grand coincidence, I thought. Nothing more. A few years later, my mom, Tina, reminded me about a story I had heard many times growing up, which is that her mom, my grandma, Madeline, was a hairstylist for Warner Brothers in Los Angeles in the mid-1940s. She led a glamorous life and adored her career. She was briefly engaged to a dashing, wealthy Italian man named Silvio, and they were very much in love. But her father, Carlo Zana, had something else in mind, or rather, someone else in mind. But that's not where this story begins. For that, we need to go back to the 1920s, to Asti, a small town in the region of Piedmont in northern Italy. The birthplace of my great-grandmothers, Ephesia Quilico, who went by Effie, and Guillermo Forno, who went by Goldie. Goldie and Effie were best friends, and they were still teenagers. They did something very brave. They left Asti behind and sailed to America. Around that time, my great-grandfather, Ernesto Camagna, left Alessandria, also in Piedmont, to find an American adventure, as did my other great-grandfather, Carlo Zana, who at 19 renounced his family's wealth in Cocelio, Piedmont, determined to write his own story in America. Not long after, Goldie married Ernie, and Effie married Carlo. Ernie and Goldie owned a very successful bakery in Apollo, Pennsylvania, that they wanted to pass down to their two sons, Pete and Frank. Frank was brilliant and wanted no part of running the bakery. He earned a full scholarship to study architecture at the University of Pittsburgh. And when his parents refused to let him go, he joined the Army and flew 50 missions as a bombardier in World War II. By this time, Goldie's friend Effie and her husband Carlo had moved to Detroit. Carlo owned a bar in Detroit and became fast friends with a Sicilian mobster named Joe Togo, known in the streets as Papa. Papa's brother Albert rose through the ranks of the mafia and became boss of the Chicago outfit. When Frank returned from the war in 1945 at the ripe old age of 30, the Camagnas and the Zanas decided that he should marry Carlo and Effie's daughter, Madeline. No more Hollywood glamour for Madeline, and goodbye, Silvio. Within a few short months, Madeline and Frank were married. Joe Togo was never too far away and took very good care of his dear friend Carlo. After their wedding, Carlo sent Madeline and Frank to Syracuse, New York. And bought Frank a bar downtown named the Esquire Lounge. For the next 4 years, Frank frequently traveled from Syracuse to New York City by himself. During this time, Madeline had 3 children, my uncles Carl and Alan, and my mother Celeste, whom you all know as Tina. Then suddenly in March of 1950, Frank bought his wife Madeline, his 3 children Carl, Alan, and Tina, and his mother-in-law Effie first-class tickets to San Francisco, California on Pan American Airlines. Must have cost him a fortune. A few months later, he put his love for architecture to good use and designed a custom home for the family on North Henry Avenue in San Jose, California. That same year, he bought the Cinnabar in downtown San Jose, one of the city's most legendary bars. As I described in my 3rd cookbook, Food with Spirit, my earliest childhood memory was sitting next to the huge vintage cash register in that bar as my grandmother would count out the cash. From what we've pieced together, it seems that Carlo's friendship with the Tocos paved the way for my Grandpa Frank's foray into organized crime. I lived for over 50 years before connecting these dots. My grandfather Frank was a complicated man, brilliant, creative, and restless. The type of man who opted to risk death dropping bombs on Nazis instead of living out his days at a bakery in Pennsylvania. In July 1970, my Grandpa Frank took my grandma on a 4-month trip to northern Italy. When they returned in October, he told my mom, Tina, he had something special planned, a trip to Las Vegas. Just the 2 of them, to celebrate her 21st birthday on December 8th. She was ecstatic. At this point, Frank had positioned 2 of his uncles as lieutenants in the mafia, John Forno in upstate New York, and Vic Forno in Phoenix, Arizona. John and Vic were the brothers of my great-grandmother, Goldie Forno, Frank's mother. But throughout his time in Italy, he had been struggling with severe abdominal pain. After returning home, he finally sought medical care and learned the devastating truth. It was stage 4 pancreatic cancer. A month later, on November 15, 1970, Frank Camagna took his last breath at the age of 55. Within weeks of losing her father, my mom learned that she was pregnant with me. After 24 excruciating hours of labor, I was born May 13, 1971. Right around this time, Joseph Colombo, head of the Colombo crime family in New York, founded the Italian-American Civil Rights League, sometimes informally referred to as the Italian-American Defamation League. Colombo positioned the group as a civil rights organization to fight stereotypes of Italian Americans as mobsters, particularly in reaction to how the mafia was portrayed in the press and in the media. When the film The Godfather was in pre-production in the early 1970s, it was Joe Colombo who demanded the removal of the words mafia and Cosa Nostra from the script. On March 4th, 1972, the film The Godfather premiered at Lowe's State Theater in New York City, forever shaping what most Americans, and in fact the world, thought they knew about organized crime. Standing here in the historic courtroom at the Mob Museum, it feels quite surreal to share such vivid details about the grandfather I was never destined to meet. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough to see his daughter, Tina Celeste, become a fiercely dedicated mother, a PhD, and a professor. He didn't live long enough to see his granddaughter graduate from law school, marry an incredible man. Woo! And see her name in lights on the Las Vegas Strip. I think my grandfather would be tremendously proud of our cookbook library, proud of the crowd that is assembled this evening, proud that we've built something rooted in heritage and resilience. Tonight, it is my honor to tell his story, our story, because we are the other side of the family. Thank you.